if you take the time that an individual will spend cold calling, this is the way I see the breakdown. And basically, 30% of the time is spent on phone and CRM stuff. And what I mean by that is this is looking up contact information, navigating through a CRM, maybe going to look up someone on LinkedIn, getting a phone number, dialing the phone, sitting on hold, going through an auto attendant system, press 1 for this, 2 for that. And so that's all the CRM and phone stuff. And so I actually think that takes up about 30% of a salesperson's time. Then another 30% of the time is spent emailing and leaving voicemail messages or running into voicemail boxes. So this could be typing emails before you call someone. It could be someone said, hey, send me your info, and you spend some time typing up an email. You just left a voicemail message. You're typing up a follow-up voicemail message. But so 30% there. Another 30% is dealing with gatekeepers. So this is you're calling and you have to either try to get through a gatekeeper, or it's a gatekeeper that's answering your phone and whatnot. So, and then 10% of the time is actually talking to the key prospects that you want to talk to. Now you could move those numbers around a little bit. You can actually purchase different forms of technology that can decrease those areas. Like you can use an auto dialer for to decrease the amount of time on the phone. You can do stuff with email. I might show you some stuff here that would decrease your email time today. But the point is that the bulk of your time is not spent talking to prospects. The bulk of your time is sort of driving the car and moving the machine. Let's look at what that looks like when you start thinking about how much time that is on your week as a either business owner or salesperson. So if we keep that breakdown the same, if you agree with that, let's say you spend 10 hours a week cold calling. And I think for a salesperson, I mean, depending on what your territory looks like, this might be a good amount. We're talking about 2 hours a day, just pure phone prospecting. And if you're doing that, I mean, if you work inside sales, your whole day might be cold calling. But you're probably not on this watching this because you wouldn't want to outsource your own job. But if you're a sales exec or a business owner, if you're doing 10 hours a week, that's pretty good. But now you start to think about it, you're spending 3 hours on the phone stuff, 3 hours on email and voicemail, 3 hours talking to gatekeeper, and really only 1 hour with target prospects. You may see that in different ways. I actually see that as if you put in all that effort and you're getting an hour of time with the people that you want to talk to, that's good. That's probably that's worth the effort. But you got to notice that there's a lot of effort that went into getting to that 1 hour. And if you look at this from another side, which maybe a lot of people can relate to this, if you've ever just if you're not doing any cold calling and you muscled out an hour of cold calling, it might be 18 minutes on all those big areas and only 6 minutes talking to prospects. And what that usually ends up looking like is you spend an hour cold calling and you had like 1 or 2 conversations. And you probably, if you've ever experienced that, here's what you might feel, and I say this because this is what I feel in that situation, is that you feel like you're wasting your time. You feel like you're not accomplishing anything and whatnot. But the reality is that you are. It's just that you have to do so much work to get to that 6 minutes. And if you did that for 10 hours a week, you'd end up with an hour, which, like I said, that's an hour of on the phone with prospects. And if you make the most out of those calls, you can generate some leads. It's just so much work to get there. And what I refer to this as, it's a very grinding process. And like I said, if you're an inside salesperson, that's what you're hired to do. But if you're a sales exec, you might be able to work on larger, more strategic activities like proposals or presentations, and this stuff might just get in your way. In addition, if you're a sales exec, you might actually also be able to go to networking events. So which I think networking might be one of the best ways to generate leads. That's not to say that we shouldn't be using the phone, but if you can, instead of spending 10 hours a week on this stuff, have someone else do this, and you're out there networking, man, that can really improve your results. So let's look at this from a skill level standpoint, because we have these big chunks of time. And what's interesting is, from a skill standpoint, the phone CRM stuff, sending emails, leaving voicemails, you're talking about a very low skill level. What I mean by skill level is level of experience, level of knowledge, sales experience, whatnot. So if you're either an experienced sales exec, maybe years of experience in your industry, years of experience with the company that you work for, if you're a business owner, your time is way too valuable to be spending it on such a low skill activity, meaning it's so low skill that it's easy to delegate it to someone else who doesn't have all that experience. And another way to look at it is to think about what your billable rate is per hour. If you're a consultant, you might know exactly what that number is. And if your billable rate is a certain figure, then for you to spend 3 hours on this low skill activity, it just doesn't make sense when someone of a lower skill can do that for you. So you look at 6 hours or 60% is low skill. And then I put the talking with gatekeepers at a medium skill. It's still pretty low skill, but I put it at medium because the gatekeepers can be feisty and give you objections. So you kind of have to know how you at times need to know how to get around those, or how to deal with those, or how to deal with gatekeepers to be successful, or to be more effective than if you didn't know how to. And so I put that at a medium level, although that's fairly easy to teach. And to be honest with you, not only is it fairly easy to teach someone who already can do the low skill stuff, I'll tell you, a lot of experienced sales execs, they're sharp as a knife, but they don't have the key tactics for dealing with gatekeepers. So, meaning we can teach an outsourced work-at-home agent how to deal with the gatekeepers, and they can do the bulk of this. Now, what you might see there that's not circled or boxed in is the talking with prospects, and I gave that a high level of skill, because that, you get a prospect on the phone, you only have a limited amount of time. Let's label that as high skill, and I won't disagree with that. When you see high skill there, you might think, okay, well, that's what I need to do, so how am I going to get the other people to do this, and then I do the talking with the prospects? Well, the reality is yes, it's high skill, but it's still something that can be outsourced. And let me explain that by showing you the first step in the sales process is the initial contact. And this is what you're going to get that work-at-home agent to do. And it's a cold call, or it could be an email, whatever. I mean, some mix of both probably is what it ends up being. And that's going to be a 2 to 5 minute phone conversation. The goal of that is to pre-qualify. Really, the goal of that call is to schedule an appointment. We're not getting into real detailed information about the product. We're not getting into detailed information about the company. So all that knowledge that you have in your head, it's not even really a point that can be used at this moment. Where that knowledge starts to come in is in the appointment. So in the appointment is where you kind of spend half of the time on the prospect and half of the time on you. This is where you can qualify a little further, get more information from them, like I said, share some more information about you, and then drive towards a presentation, and then that's where you might give a presentation or a proposal or a quote. So the bottom two pieces of this process, yes, all that knowledge in your head is where that comes in, and the initial contact, it's not needed. Meaning it's high skill, yes, but we can teach someone and we can delegate that task. And that's what I did with my appointment setting business and my work at home agents. We always drew the line between those first two steps, and I would never go beyond that, because the learning curve it just spikes right after the appointment. To get the appointment and to have the 2 to 5 minute conversation, we can get someone to do that fairly quickly. And so the message there is that if you think about how all the time that is spent, it just makes sense for someone else to do it, depending on the situation you're in.